Tēnā koutou katoa, haere mai ki tēnei hui, ki te mana whenua rangitānei, he mihi nui, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Strategy Committee today. We are live streaming and our video from the meeting will be available on our YouTube channel at a later date. We do have some members of the public here, good morning. Just if there is an emergency, we'll follow our committee administrators outside and meet by the clock tower in Te Maraeohene, and there is a defibrillator on the ground floor if things get exciting. First up, we'll just take apologies. We do have an apology from Councillor Bowen for... Oh, sorry, not Councillor Bowen, Councillor Beattie for late arrival on council business. My apologies, looking at Councillor Bowen as I said that, and Councillor Finlay. Are there any other apologies? Great, I will move that the apologies be received, seconded by Councillor Hancock, thank you, and I'll invite you to vote. Great, that has carried 100%. I haven't had any notification of additional items. Just moving down to declarations of interest. Are there any? Great, moving on to public comment. And we do have Andrew Simpson here to make public comment, and there has also been a copy of a petition that has been circulated to councillors, so you should have a copy of that. Morning, Andrew. So just make sure your microphone's on before we start, and you've got 3 minutes to speak, and then we'll have time for questions.
Cool, thank you. Is that all right? Yes. Hi, I'm Andrew, and I'm speaking on behalf of East Street to request 2 speed bumps on our street to reduce speed and noise, and a median barrier at each end to stop motorists from cutting the corners. In the petition you have in front of you, of the 22 houses that we surveyed, out of the 33 on our street, we had a 100% agreement rate that speed bumps and median barriers will increase safety and quality of life on the street. There are a lot of young children on our street, many of whom play on the footpaths and walk home from Parkland School. We walk our baby daily, and many other residents walk the street regularly. With the increasing speeds and volumes of vehicles, we feel it's only a matter of time before a vehicle loses control. I've witnessed 2 vehicles racing side by side going east up our street. Barry Bum believes he's seen a vehicle travelling over 100 kilometres per hour. And if you talk to any of the signatories in the petition, you'll find similar stories and a growing fear due to this problem. Aside from the increasing danger to walk the street, the disturbance that vehicles are causing to residents is also on the rise. Chris and Carla at number 11 say them and all 3 of their children were woken up by a single vehicle in the early hours a few months ago. Our 9-month-old baby has been frightened awake dozens of times by the noise, even though we had double glazing installed in her room a year ago. And Nobi at number 9 and Brittany at 34 also have babies, and they suffer the same problem. I've got a couple of videos that we took of the sort of thing I'm talking about. That's our baby. Yeah, it's a couple, and yeah, in the early months it was really bad. That was happening on a weekly basis. Many other residents have contacted the council about this issue. Deb Corker, Gail Ward and Jonathan Barlow, whose addresses you can find in the petition, are some of them. And again, if you talk to any of the signatories, you'll find that the speed and noise is really affecting our quality of life. So we kindly request that the council help us to restore that on what has otherwise been a great place to live. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. We have got a couple of questions. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Andrew, for putting this together and bringing it to us. I noticed that one of the signatories mentioned about boy races, and I just wanted to ask, is this some kind of coordinated use of your street for racing and congregating, or is this just because it's a convenient cut through? Do you know what I mean? Like, is this a regular group, I suppose, that are subjecting you to noise, or is this just more random members of the public?
It's a regular cut-through, councillor. I brought a little diagram here.
Yep, no, I know where it is. Yep.
Well, yeah, just for the council, I'll just show you, just to kind of answer that question. Sorry, I haven't done this very well, but this is Main Street up the top, Ruahine Street down there. You got Church and Ferguson with East Street at the bottom here. And a lot of the traffic coming from Ashurst out east and probably Fielding come along Main Street. And anyone going to sort of Massey, Linton and the research areas and that, they generally come down Fitzroy and then go up Church, Ferguson or east. And because of these roundabouts here that are often backed up. And can I go back to that picture just to show you? Yeah, so that's a picture of Ruahine Street that I took a couple of days ago, and the street on the left is Luton Street, way down here, which is 200 metres south of Ferguson. As you can see, like the cars are getting backed up basically all the way back to Luton. Okay, that's the north-going traffic, but so you get a lot of cars cutting up at peak hour, hooking right there. I've seen people actually go into the lane that my van's sitting in there, going north, just to swing down East Street, and that causes corner cutting, and it's the same coming from, as I say, Ashurst and Fielding. They come down, and to avoid the roundabouts, they come up East Street, and often, yeah, speeding and things like that. So it's not, I mean, there are boy races as well, like that example that I had of people at number 9 who all got woken up in the early hours. Their whole family did, from people revving their cars, so it's...
Yeah, so it's not really just one group, it's a little bit sort of the consequence of other changes that have been made to the network further up with roundabouts and stuff.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hapara.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Andrew. Just along the lines of what Councillor Johnson said, do you think there are boy races that are congregating there at all and revving up their engines, or are they basically just cutting through the street? It's more, I'm really thinking more about the noise and the volume of noise on the street.
Yeah, I haven't seen like an orchestrated boy racer effort. We haven't seen dozens of cars in the middle of the night. It's usually one-offs.
So it's the cutting through.
The cutting through, but you don't have to have a boy racer car to have a car that's loud enough to wake people up when you accelerate fast, and we're getting that from a lot of modern vehicles and things, and you know, people that soup their cars up and cut their mufflers off and things.
I actually do witness it because I do walk the dog down the street, so thank you very much, Andrew.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Andrew, for coming in and for alerting us to these concerns that you have. Just one question for you, and then I might have a question through the chair for officers. Just to understand, in your petition here, Andrew, you've asked for some quite specific mitigations or specific numbers of things to be installed, and want to get a sense of how open you'd be to sort of, I guess, engineering and sort of design coming in to that part of the city and working out what a comprehensive solution would look like that may or may not be a perfect match to what you're asking for here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we'd just be happy to have some action for a start. And yeah, I mean, are you asking if I'd be happy to consult, or?
Not so much that, but just if you would be happy if council officers actually were to get involved to find out what specific solutions might be that may not be a perfect match to this, but might be a professionally informed approach, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I mean, we'd be, yeah, as I say, we'd be happy with any action. I'd just probably add to that people on the street believe that it is speed bumps that are needed. Again, we're not engineers, but building out the ends of the street and potentially putting chicanes in would obviously help and it'd stop the people coming in quick. But we feel, due to what I sort of showed you on there, is people are still going to use that. The volume of vehicles probably won't decrease that much, and then they're going to probably go, put their foot down, and we're going to have similar issues. That's what we feel. But again, yeah, we'd be happy to have you guys, the engineers and that, take a good look at it and see what they decide.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair, if I might ask through you for a comment from management around awareness of this issue and any early work that might be being done in response.
Yes, I'll ask the Chief Infrastructure Officer to respond.
Through the Chair, we are aware of the issues at East Street. One of our officers went out to East Street fairly recently in response to the concerns that were raised to have a look at the street. The street is in our safety programme. So it's within our safety programme. At the moment, with current funding levels, the work won't get done within the first 3 years. But the street is in our work programme.
Thank you. If I can then further clarify a comment around options to revisit that time frame. Is it solely budget, or is there a prioritization opportunity?
The Chair, yes, sorry, I should have explained that. There's a very comprehensive safety prioritisation set of criteria which are used to align with the NZTA co-funding of safety measures. So there's a very structured safety assessment based on a number of issues, including numbers of cars, speeds, sight lines, all sorts of stuff.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Andrew. Good to see you again. Can I just ask, since you've sent this to me, this is the same petition that you sent to me, isn't it?
That's the one,
Yeah. So has it got worse? Is it the same, or has it decreased since we met some weeks ago?
I wouldn't say that I've noticed any significant change either way.
It's about the same.
About the same,
Okay.
yeah. Maybe the boy racer, the early hours issues of those cars revving in the early hours comes down a bit in the colder months, maybe. Yeah.
Right, okay. Through you, Madam Chair, could I suggest, just it's been teased out by Councillor Barrett too, that our long-term plan is in at the moment, and the submissions close on Friday, that you just package this up and put that into a submission.
Okay, will do, thanks.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully that's better. And thank you, Andrew. Hey, listen, I just want to tidy up a couple of things. So how long has this been like a problem within that particular area? Is it the last 12 months, 2 years?
So I actually contacted the council in 2016 and they put the speed detection tubes out then for 3 days. So there was data collected back then. As I said, at least 3 other people on the street have contacted the council about it. I think 4 actually, but I know of 3. So it's been a few years. As we've all noticed it, it's been getting worse year to year.
Okay, and just with that, has there been any coordinated conversations with police? And if so, what's the outcome of that?
No, I haven't. I'm not aware of anyone else having talked to the police.
Is there a neighbourhood support group in the street?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, perhaps just through you, Madam Chair, if you perhaps could just contact me through email after the meeting, and I can perhaps set up the neighbourhood support aspect for you, which might help some coordination.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have already taken myself off the queue, and I signal you that my question has already been asked by Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I couldn't
you.
understand what your hand signals were to me before, but that makes a lot of sense now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Through you, Madam Chair, to officers, given that more permanent engineering works are in the pipeline but some way off, what's the scope for temporary measures, as we have done in other places? So, for example, at the junction of Pencarrow, Romberg and Monrad Street, there were temporary measures put in response to residents' complaints about speeding. And also, we seem to have an excess of planter boxes at the moment, so I don't know whether they could be used.
Through the chair, we can certainly look at temporary measures. Yeah, we'll certainly look at temporary measures.
So, do we need...
Can we? But I can't answer that question now. So I'm very happy to report back to the next committee on that.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I think we can refer the public comment for report back to the next committee under Standing Order 2.227. Is that your intention to do that, or would you like me to move that?
At this stage, I actually had a recommendation coming from an elected member, so I was going to wait to see what that was.
Well, with respect, Madam Chair, my advice has been that we're not allowed to make a recommendation on an item that's not on the agenda, unless that recommendation is for
The Chief Executive.
the Chief Executive, referred to the Chief Executive or another committee or subcommittee for report.
So I believe that the recommendation was to refer it to the Chief Executive for a report.
Well, in that case, would the report be back to us?
I think what we'll do is we'll just finish questions, and then I'll move into comments and allow the member to put their additional recommendation up, and then we can have a look at what it says.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you've clarified with your recent comment.
Okay. Are there any other questions? No. Thank you, Andrew, for coming in to speak with us this morning.
Thanks, and can I just say a big thanks from our street to the council for your responses by email, and to the mayor for coming out and meeting us. It's very well received. Thanks.
So I'll move that the public comment be received for information, seconded by Councillor Hancock. And Councillor Barrett, you've got an additional recommendation. We'll just bring up on the screen. Actually, would you like to speak to it while we bring it up?
Yes, happy to do so. It is actually exactly the track that Councillor Johnson was alluding to, and I think it's good to hear that officers have an awareness and are pursuing already, but some of the points raised in discussion around prioritization, around temporary measures, and understanding the road user behavior, I think would be quite useful to have insight of that back to committee. It looks like we're wrestling fonts and a few other things at the moment.
We won't worry too much about what's on the screen right now while we just sort that out. Does that conclude your comments, Councillor?
Yes.
Thank you. And so I've seconded that. We'll just open up for other comments. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you, I wonder if the mover would like to put some kind of time frame on the reporting. Just to finish that off, because it might be quite useful to have it back before long-term plan deliberations, sorry.
think we'll just put a question to the Chief Infrastructure Officer around timing, if this would be able to come back in time for the long-term plan deliberations, so that any work or any direction from elected members can be considered within the scope of the long-term plan.
Through the chair, the long-term plan will be a broader thing. From my perspective, the East Street itself detail won't be available for the long-term plan, but the considerations about the overall safety budget and whether that is amended will be part of the long-term plan discussions. We're unlikely to come to, given that it's the LTP is coming to you on the 2nd of June, we're unlikely to get to a stage where we can have something proposed for East Street. But overall, the projects within the safety component of the LTP, the road safety component of the LTP, the discussion, there could easily be a discussion at the LTP discussions about the overall level of road safety funding, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Did you wish to make further comment, Councillor?
Thank you for that reply. I mean, I'm happy to support this recommendation, but I wonder if we should include a phrase about more immediate temporary measures, because it will be quite possible for a report to come back on this to say, yep, we've got this plan and we're going to do it in year 4, and then we wouldn't have got any further forward. So I just wonder if we, could say options for mitigating safety concerns in the short term as well as a more permanent solution or something like that. I mean, happy to put that forward as an amendment, or if the mover is happy with that, for him to include it.
To comment briefly, I'm comfortable with that direction and would be interested in an officer comment around the point around time frame. I'm aware that there's a lot on officers' plates, and so don't want to put a too short of a time frame on there, but I'd be quite open to including a time frame with officer input on what's appropriate.
Sarah, do you want to respond to that?
Through the chair, yes, we are, because of the LTP and the delivery review that we're doing at the moment, everyone is flat, and the weather, so that the crews are out, so everyone is flat tack at the moment, and will be until we get to the LTP. So ideally, a month and a half to 2 months would be good for us. We'll do this as soon as we can, but everyone is extremely busy at the moment, and the team is still recruiting to build up staffing levels.
Thank you. So to me, that sounds like August meeting of planning and strategy.
Right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I do support these, but I think Councillor Johnson sort of summed it up, and there's 2 issues here. There's East Street and the fixes for that in the short term, i.e. temporary, something to take the pain away in the short term, because it has been going on for a little while. And then the longer term response, bearing in mind the officers have got quite a number of these. So I think this is number 9 in the priority, is that right?
No, Centennial Drive is number 9.
Okay.
This is below.
Right, okay, it's below. So it's in double digits in terms of safety. So the overall road safety budget does need to be looked at as well, and that's a debate for the long-term plan. I've got numerous amounts of these, as does Councillor Hancock, as does Councillor Harper, and I'm sure all of you have. So East Street's deserved of it as well, but we'll have everybody coming at us as well. So look, I think we can do something in the short term and a response that's a better response longer term. because they've got a petition in front of us and they've been waiting for some time. But just be wary, councillors, there's a whole lot more in the queue. So we just need to be aware of that. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was really to follow up the comment made by the Mayor in questions about referring this to the long-term plan. I don't think we need to ask the members of the public to go through the process of putting this in as a long-term plan submission. I wondered if, through you, we could refer the public comment to Committee of Council for consideration as part of the long-term plan, and then they don't have to do anything else with it, which would be appropriate under 2.22.7 to refer to another committee.
Yes, I mean, I think that is appropriate as long as Andrew is happy with that, because as obviously he's come to present a petition to this committee, and we just need to ensure that...
My feeling from his comment was that he was happy to have that referred to the long-term plan, but if you wanted to seek his confirmation, then...
I think what we're going to do is we are just going to pause for a couple of minutes, sort this out, and I'm just going to have a quick chat to Andrew, and then we will come back.
Do you want me to write that up while you're doing that?
Sure thing.
Right. I know, it's in the bigger thing, but they shouldn't have to put it in again. No, so I think with the two of them, yeah, yes. Hold that thought, I'll get back to that. Yes? Yes, but when it goes to the long-term plan, they redact it for public. Well, it's a public document now, they've brought it through council, so, yeah. Referred to the Committee of Council for consideration in the plan discussion of budget. Like, let me just... You happy to second? Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But they shouldn't have to be. No, they don't need to. I don't know. No. It's a public document now that it's been through council. Yeah. My decision. I love how we're all on our standing orders. I love we're all on our standing orders. Under 2.2.2.2. Live by the sword, you die by the sword. Yeah, yeah.
All right, councillors, we are back, and what I can advise is that we can't refer a petition as a submission. We can't turn a petition into a submission. There's a couple of aspects of that, and one of them is that the residents who participated in the petition essentially consented to being a part of the petition that was being presented to council. They haven't given consent to participate in a submission for the long-term plan. And additionally, the personal information that is contained in the petition would then be made available to as a part of our long-term plan process. Again, we don't have the consent for that. So we can either, if there is still I guess a desire to refer something to the long-term plan, we can refer the subject matter to the long-term plan, which wouldn't be a submission because it wouldn't have somebody associated with it. Along with that, I have had a conversation with Andrew. We've talked through how a submission could be framed up that could make reference to a petition in support of having 22 residents on the street around this, and he's comfortable moving forward, putting in a submission himself. So we have had an additional recommendation come forward, which I'm not going to accept at this stage because it doesn't fit with the advice I've been given and the advice I've just shared with you all. So at this stage, we are looking at the resolutions on the screen, and I'm comfortable that we've captured, through another process, a way to get this into the long-term plan conversation. So we'll move back into comment on the recommendations on the screen. So I've got Councillor Barrett in the queue.
I think any points that I wanted to raise had been addressed then through what you've just announced.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to make comment? Councillor Bowen.
Just to say thank you, Madam Chair, for the advice received through the Chair, and on that basis I'll withdraw the recommendation that I'd put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, with no further comment, I'll invite you to vote. That has carried 100%. Moving on to the confirmation of minutes, page 7. So I'll move that the committee resolve the Planning and Strategy Committee meeting of 10th of March 2021, Part 1 Public, be confirmed as a true and correct record. Seconded by Councillor Hancock. Thank you. Are there any questions? No comments? I'll invite you to vote. And that has carried 14 in favour and 1 abstention. All right, moving on to item 6, the future use of Summerhays Street, former Terrace End Bowling Club, page 13, and we have got Keegan and David to present this.
Kia ora koutou, Madam Chair, elected members. Unfortunately, Michael Duandum is unavailable this morning, so I'll do a short intro, and Keegan's available to, Keegan prepared the consultation document and is available to assist with questions as well. So hopefully it's relatively self-explanatory after the earlier resolutions passed in April that provided the broad direction around the Council's preferred future use of Summerhays Street. So we've gone away as directed and prepared a consultation document with a preferred option or a proposal to repurpose the land for housing. Just to, I guess, to reiterate the conversation that happened in April is that the preferred option is for housing, and the consultation process will be about comparing the use of the land for housing versus those other options. However, I want to make it very clear that the type of housing that is used on the site is a separate council decision that can be is wholly made by this council at an appropriate time. So the consultation question is repurposing the land for housing versus those other options. There may well be submissions about the type of housing and that could potentially inform a future council decision about the type of council housing that can be made. And that allows the council to receive specific advice on the range of housing options that could be used. So I think the one last point I'd like to make is there's been some expressions about how we can make this process move quickly, given the strong demand for housing. So we have to consult with an open mind. We have a proposal. It will run through the consultation process. Officers can start to prepare the district plan change document that would involve the rezoning of the balance of the land to residential during the consultation process, but we do need to be mindful that we need to keep an open mind during the consultation process, but that work can start. The other potential option is after the consultation process, if the council wanted to move with the development prior to the rezoning, then given that half the site is already zoned residential, there could be an option to explore applying for a resource consent for housing on the balance of the land after this consultation. That will come with risks potentially around limited notification and involvement of neighbours and things like that. So we're thinking about how we can move quickly. Like everything, there are risks associated with those things, but the most important thing at the moment is that we run through the LGA consultation process with an open mind and listen to submissions. Happy to answer any questions between Keegan or myself.
I might just add to that, just to reiterate that we've tried to prepare the statement of proposal as simply as possible and keep the options pretty clear at this first test is what's the most appropriate future use for the land, housing, recreation, community, and not to try and muddy things too much when it doesn't need to at this particular stage. And just the trigger point for this land, if anyone's out of context here, is the Terrace End Bowling Club about 8 months ago did a merger with Northern Bowling Club, and apparently reports are going that's going well. So it doesn't look like there would be any retraction of that merger, which is good. We've also got our Parks and Reserves manager to assist with any potentially specific contextual questions that we can't answer. So.
Thank you. There are a few questions. Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just one question. In terms of the rezoning of this, if it was to be put into housing, are there any issues or difficulties envisaged just around access to this particular plot of land? And how would that be dealt with?
Yeah, so as part of the rezoning proposal, there'd be a transportation assessment that would look at those issues in more detail.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, David, and thanks, Keegan. Couple questions. The report mentions a special consultative procedure. Can you just give us a quick overview of what that looks like in practice?
Yep. So it's a technique outlined in the LGA. So it's effectively the technique that we use for the LTP, which is a proposal. It has to go out for a minimum period of a month. We will receive submissions. There'll be an opportunity for those to be heard. But I think the key part of the special consultative process is that it's consultation. It's not engagement. So we are consulting on a preferred proposal to use the land for housing, and there are other options. So the key parts of that is about a proposal, options, 1 month submission, and doing that in an open mind.
Great, thank you. Second question I had was just around thinking about this in contrast to the recent efforts being made around Huia Street, where we developed some quite nice visuals and a range of sort of options to help the community visualize the potential, and here we seem to be not doing that. Just wondering if that's what the rationale is around that.
A combination of factors. One is resourcing. The second is we've talked about wanting to move quickly and take some calculated risks to increase housing supply in the city.
Thank you. Finally, then, if I might ask, we're looking at potentially taking away reserve status. If we were to get to a final option, I realize this is reasonably hypothetical at this point, but if we were to get to a final option that was largely housing but had a bit of a pocket park type thing in it that provided some open space there, would that then require a redesignation as a reserve, or could that happen within the context of the district plan change?
Just to clarify, this land isn't actually covered by the Reserves Act at the moment, so the Local Government Act requires us to consult because it's effectively a public space or a park. But after that consultation process, if we proceeded and rezoned this, the land, there'd be nothing that would, if we developed, say, a housing development with a small pocket park, that would be entirely appropriate as part of the design of the development and consenting under the residential zone.
All right, thank you. Madam Chair.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, David and Keegan. I've read through it a few times, but I can't really see any comment around whether the consultation mentions whether land would be kept in council ownership or sold. So the consultation seems to be silent on that. Is that deliberate?
It is deliberate because, as I said earlier, the council is yet to make a decision about, the way in which the site will be developed for housing, and it's important from my advice as the council receives, if it proceeds down this path, there'll be a range of ways in which the site can be developed for housing. But I think the consultation question for the community is if the site is used for housing, whether it's retained by the council or whether it's sold, it's removed from, it's unable to be used for community use or recreation use. So that's the nature of the consultation we're having. But I think it's important that the council receives advice on the range of housing options before it makes a decision. And as I said, that's a completely separate council decision that is to be made at an appropriate stage.
Because I recall in, I'm trying to think when it was, 2013, I think, when council put forward a proposal for sale of a number of reserves, that one of the key points that came back in submissions from the public was around the sale of land. So it wasn't so much the purpose of the land that concerned people as the disposal of a council asset, if you look at it that way. And so I wonder if it would be helpful to have at least something in this that talks about the fact that the whether to retain or to sell the land has not yet been decided, and that is a separate question. Because my answer to this consultation as a member of the public would depend very much on whether the land was to be retained by council or whether it was to be sold into private hands. And so I'm sure I wouldn't be the only one on that, and I wonder if some amendment to that could be considered.
I think we could certainly add a sentence or a paragraph to that effect, that a decision is yet to be made on whether it will be sold or retained. And that nothing within this document sort of limits those options. So there is a resolution that the Chair and Deputy Chair approve minor amendments, so it could be either done through that or it could be a specific resolution. Probably, given that it isn't given that that sentence wouldn't be making a decision about selling or retaining, it probably is a minor amendment.
Yeah, I mean, it's not materially changing anything. It's just clarifying, I suppose, because I suspect that that's something that will exercise the minds of people consulting on it, responding to the consultation. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, David and Keegan. Depending on the development there, is there a possibility of accessing that part of that 3.2 billion of the government's?
We're yet to see the criteria for that 3.2 billion. There was some hints that it's more about what we'd describe as bulk infrastructure to support increased supply. So, for instance, maybe the bulk infrastructure or bulk network infrastructure required to service Kaka Tangiata. But certainly we will keep an open mind and we will follow the government's announcements. They were going to release some criteria about that funding. For instance, this site, while it will require a small lane or a road, it doesn't require bulk infrastructure in order to enable it to be developed. But certainly if that 3.8 billion includes the option for advancing sites such as this, we would be putting forward a range of proposals, and if it includes this, then we can, if it includes the option for these types of developments, then that's something we can look at.
So we should be ready for when that criteria is there in case that...
Yes, we're closely monitoring any announcements out of government around that fund.
Thank you.
Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Most of my questions have already been answered, but I've just got one on page 22. When we look at option 1 in the proposal, it just says council retains control of the site and can ensure occurs in a timely manner. What would be the thing that occurs in a timely manner?
Thank you for picking that up. A development occurs in a timely manner.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Great, thank you, David and Keegan. I'm happy to move the recommendations on the screen, seconded by Councillor Hancock, and I'll open up for any comment. Great, with no comment, I will invite you to vote. And that has carried 100%. Moving on to the committee work schedule, page 29. Now I'll just ask if the General Manager has any comments to make.
Nothing further than what's in front of the committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the work schedule? Councillor Hancock.
Stand away. Sorry, Madam Chair. Just item 5, there's actually no date on that, and it's just, and there's no comments here in terms of where that's at the moment. Just wonder if we get some clarification, please.
Yes, I had an update as of yesterday that the Parliamentary Council Office in Wellington has been working with our staff, and they're comfortable with the amendment bill that we've drafted, and we understand it will be publicly notified within the next month, which is the change to the legislation, the Palmerston North Reserves and Powering Act.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the General Manager, just to seek a comment on item 6, which I note is in a process of seeking expression. So just looking for some certainty around that June 2022 date for that report.
Yes, there's a RFP process underway at the moment, so we would anticipate having a consultant appointed in the lead up to the financial year, bearing in mind the funding for that is in the LTP. So if that funding is approved and the consultant is appointed, then it's anticipated to be a 12-month piece of work.
Thank you.
Right, with no further questions, I'll move that the committee receive the work schedule, seconded by Councillor Hancock. Are there any comments? I'll invite you to vote. And that has carried 100%. So that now concludes our business. Nō reira, na mihi nui kia koutou, e na mana, e na reo, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And we'll just ask anybody who is chairing long-term plan sessions, submission sessions, if you could just stay behind